This is Build It Baby, the show for big ideas, brave pivots, and bold next chapters. So let's do it. Let's build it, baby. If you've started building something meaningful, a business, a dream, a side hustle, a healthier life, perhaps a new direction, and suddenly feel like there are not enough hours in a day, well then stay right here. Because today I want to talk about one of the biggest hidden reasons people stop progressing. It certainly isn't lack of talent, not lack of ideas, and not lack of desire, but lack of prioritization. I'm Penelope Bent, and this is Build It Baby, the show for dreamers who are doers, people ready to build their businesses, career, and life with intention. And today we're talking about why being busy is not the same thing as building, why some people stay overwhelmed for years, and how learning to prioritize correctly can completely change the speed and direction of your life. So let's do this. Let's build it, baby. Okay, so I think one of the biggest shocks people experience after they finally decide to change their life is realizing how hard it is to prioritize your time for what actually matters. Because in the beginning, people think the hardest part is deciding. The hardest part is starting. The hardest part is all the courage you need to muster up to take that big, bold step. And I couldn't agree more. Those things do matter. But the key here is what happens after you begin. Well, there's a whole different challenge that pops up. And that challenge is this. How do you build something meaningful while life keeps happening around you? Great question, right? How do you build a business while working full time? How do you create a podcast while paying the bills? How do you reinvent yourself while raising children? How do you pursue purposes or a purpose while answering emails, doing laundry, sitting in meetings, paying taxes, grocery shopping, and trying to survive modern life? And what starts happening for many people is that they begin confusing movement with progress. They become busy, but not intentionally. They are active, but they're not aligned. They're exhausted, but they're not actually advancing. And this is where so many dreams quietly disappear, not because people lack potential, but because everything becomes equally important. And when everything becomes important, nothing truly moves. This is why I believe prioritizing is not a luxury. It's a skill. It's something as a builder that needs to be learned. If you really want to accomplish your goal, to build the business or, build the life of your choice. It is actually a life-building skill. It's a success skill. It's a leadership skill. And honestly, I believe it's an emotional maturity skill. Because prioritizing requires something many people struggle with. And you know what that is? It's called choosing. Choosing what matters most. Choosing what deserves your energy. Choosing what gets your best hours. Choosing what you're willing to delay. And sometimes choosing who you are willing to disappoint. That's the part nobody talks about enough. Every meaningful build requires an elimination. It may not be big things, but it's amazing sometimes the little things that you may have to eliminate. And it may not, be forever, But in order to get from point A to point B, there is a time when you might want to eliminate a few things just for now. You cannot build 5 lives at the same time. You cannot say yes to everything and still expect the clarity. And this becomes especially difficult for very ambitious people, because ambitious people often want to do everything. They've got the idea, they've got the vision, they have the creativity, they know the possibilities. But possibility without prioritization becomes chaos. And chaos truly drains momentum. And it leads to just exhaustion and a mental burnout. Many times we can just take on too many things all at one time. I mean, I'm the queen of taking on a billion things. So I always look at it as running some parallel campaigns. I break my day up prioritizing as to, okay, which company am I working on? What's my focus here? Then I'll go on to the next one. I like a lot of variety. So for me, I think to stick with just one line of build would probably not be good for me. You know me, I'm a believer in multiple revenue streams. So I want to be able to make sure that, I'm prioritizing, I'm putting my efforts in different buckets, so to speak, as I go through my day. And here's something else that I learned. A lot of people do not actually have a time management problem. Most people are pretty doggone good at that. They can figure out, how to get ready for work and be on time and show up for the meetings and so on and so forth. But they have a decision problem, especially when these are personal decisions. When they have to choose, what are the most important things in my day as I'm moving forward with my intention? Because once you decide what truly matters, your calendar definitely starts changing. Your habits start changing. Your focus starts changing. Your boundaries start changing. And many people avoid making those decisions because prioritizing forces honesty. And there is also another piece in there. Honesty can feel really uncomfortable. Because once you become really honest, you realize that some things are not actually moving your life forward. And for myself personally, I think there's a moment when you realize that some things are distractions, especially when it comes to close friends and spending time with them or listening to what's going on in their lives. There is a moment when I've asked myself, am I just this selfish bitch here? Because I can't spend a lot of time talking about these situations when I am trying to be involved in my day, in my build. That's why I have really strict office hours, even though my office is in my home. It's like in my head. I hit the office by 9 a.m. I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. Take a little break for lunch. And then I try to wrap things up, between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Sometimes maybe I'll have to go longer. Do I have a few personal calls in between all that? Absolutely. But some things are emotional avoidance disguised as productivity. I think that I have looked at some things, especially when I'm putting an offer together, and I know if there's other builders out there, you've had to experience this. And I said, yes, emotional avoidance. For example, how many times can I reframe an offer for Recruiter Mania because I just was avoiding doing my outreach. I was avoiding reaching out to potential clients. And one thing that I found today that was so interesting is that I have been going through these offers and revising them for a long time, for a long time now. I mean, not years, but for several months, and I've been chewing on them and reworking them and seeing how it feels to me and so on. And one thing that I discovered today is that I sat down with those same body of paperwork, because I print everything out that I work on the computer, because sometimes I can think better when I'm actually holding the papers. I'm very, very kinetic, so I like to move the papers around or whatever, but they make a lot more sense to me. And I realized as I was working on this offer that has just been eluding me, that I discovered the piece that was missing. And so I had kind of beaten myself up because I thought, you are just such a chicken shit here. You are playing with these offers way beyond the call of duty here. And why are you doing this? And I thought to myself, well, is it because you're so afraid, someone's going to reject them, or you're not going to get the response that you want? And I was so grateful to find out today, when I finally put the cherry on top of the offer, as I realized today, I discovered that there was an element that was a part of the whole business, the whole narrative about the business, that was just not in alignment with who I was. And it was interesting, because I started thinking about, this just feels so manufactured to me. And I kept going back over it and back over it. And I realized today that it was the alignment. It was that I was trying to keep the product actually relatively small, when in reality, my product and service was so much bigger than that. And I was able to put the words to the process. So I realized with glee that I wasn't having an emotional avoidance issue. I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find the last piece. The puzzle was not complete for me, and I found it. And I was so excited to say to myself, okay, I wasn't staying busy because I was feeling safer. I was actually fairly focused, and I kept going back to it, because focused really means commitment. I was really committed to this. I want this company to thrive, and the market is changing, and I knew that my offer needed to be worked with a little further. And also, focus means visibility. So I knew I was ready. I'm ready to pitch my product. I'm ready to be visible. I'm ready to speak of it. I'm not worried about, quote, staying small. I know there's a lot of risk to building. Hell, I've been building through more eras than you can shake a stick at. But what I found that really matters is that focus just really meant that I needed to dial it in so that I could truly go for it. That it felt so right and so aligned and so me that, yeah, okay, I'm ready. I'm going for it. And I'm telling you, it didn't feel terrifying like I had felt before. It felt absolutely right. Right for me, right for the clients that I am pursuing. I really felt that I was in alignment with what I am building. So I know so many builders out there will stay scattered. They answer emails for 3 hours. They reorganize things. They consume information endlessly. They talk about ideas, research, plan, adjust, rework, think, and the list goes on. And I think you have to ask yourself, or try to discover, why you're not really fully committed, why the energy isn't committed toward the thing that could actually change your life. And if you're like me, I had to just keep going back to that drawing board till I found it. And honestly, I didn't even know it was missing. It was just a feeling that I had. I was actually working on some social media, a post I wanted to make. And from that, I kind of expanded my thoughts about it, and bingo, there it was, just like a beautiful package with a bow on it. I got it. I finally said to myself, "Ah, my God, I so get it. I get what I wanted to, what I needed to make this really happen." So I think as you move forward in a build, I think it's important to really look at what matters. Rest matters, recovery time matters, family time matters, life matters. It's not about becoming a machine. I'm not encouraging, that you create this hustle culture. This is not work harder until you collapse. Actually, this episode is the opposite of that. Complete opposite of that. This is about becoming intentional enough that your energy finally starts creating real movement. And I feel like that's what happened to me today. I kept going back there because I wasn't getting out of my discovery of what I was trying to build, what offer in that particular offer, what I was trying to say. I wasn't getting it. And so for the last 4 or 5 days, I've been going and sitting with that and rereading it, reading what my feelings are, writing about what I want this to be when it's complete. And I'll be damned if I found it. And I think it's because I prioritized going back, even though there was a part of me that was thinking, "Oh, you are just wasting your time here. You are just procrastinating." And I realized that actually I was not exhausting myself. I was doing it within a certain period of time. I wasn't spending hours, but every day I would go and sit quietly and reread it, and then let my mind and my creative process just kind of chew on it. And then it started to really expand. More hours do not automatically equal more progress. But the focused hours create the progress, the intention to go back, even if it's for, I don't keep time, but maybe I was spending, 20, 30 minutes on it for the last several days. And I like clear hours because that's good for me. I like to know when I'm in work mode, and I like to know when I can, it's the end of the day and I can go sit and, look at the water and have my cocktail. So I do believe clear hours create progress. And I think that's a really important part to create. And most importantly, I think it's really absolutely valuable and very specific to protect those hours, because that's the time that you create progress. That is your thought time, your creative time. And that time should be prioritized as a very specific and cherished, important part of your build. People know what really matters, and they stopped treating every demand equally. That's powerful. So I want to give you something practical today, because prioritizing cannot stay theoretical. It has to become operational. So let me share what I call the Build It Baby priority filter. And let me tell you, this comes from me directly, from my experience, as all of these podcasts do. But on this one, this is a very raw, current experience. When life gets in the way of your build, or when you're unable to integrate your build into the other responsibilities in your life, these are the questions I'd like you to ask yourself. What actually moves my life forward? Now, that could be in a relationship. That could also be you're building a business because of financial reasons, because you want to move your life forward on a financial level as well. Not what keeps me busy, not what keeps me comfortable, and not what keeps me distracted, but what creates real movement. So real movement forward. Sometimes it's making sales calls. Maybe it's finishing the application. Maybe for me, it's recording the podcast. Maybe you need to be building the website or working with somebody to build a website. Perhaps you need to send in the proposal. Having the difficult conversation, launching the thing, movement is usually connected to courage. So if you're needing to have that difficult conversation, then you need to really address that. And pay attention to those things that really create the movement. Make a list. I'm a big list person because that keeps me on track, and it also helps me create more self-leadership. That is kind of my anchor. Okay, number 2. What only makes me feel productive? This one stings a little bit because we all have a bit of a productive theater. Things that look productive but actually create little return. Like I love website building and design, and I can sit for hours being, some graphic designer. Does it have to be that extensive? What I've learned this past year, because I've got 5 different companies that I'm, working on simultaneously, each website does not have to be the end all. I can always add in, but get the damn thing up there, get the basics, get your narrative, get your feel behind it. What is going to actually create a return? So, constant checking, constant tweaking, constant organizing, constant reacting. Is that really going to move the needle here? And I understand some administration is necessary. But if your entire day disappears into maintenance, then you never actually build anything. And I think some of it can be activities, perhaps it's habits, conversations, people, obligations. Sometimes the greatest productivity strategy is subtraction. Like, you're out of here today. I don't need to that file folder will still be there tomorrow. I really need to fight the dragon here and get this solidified in my head as what I want this offer to be, or what my next move is. You don't necessarily have to have addition. And number 4, ask yourself this question: what are you avoiding? And I'm telling you, that question can change your life. Because often the thing we avoid the most is the thing most connected to growth. And I know last week I was avoiding that version of my offer. I was frustrated, I was stumped, and in some respects I think it was smart. I walked away from it for a week. I let it sit there in that file. I stared at it a while. I moved papers around a little bit. And I realized that when I was ready to go back, I knew I would make more progress. So I think when you ask yourself, is the thing most connected to growth? Is it connected to your visibility? Is it selling? Do you need to be asking a question? Are you creating? Are you leading? Are you changing? I think it's really important to look at those things that we might potentially avoid. I remember there was a time that I hated reaching out to potential clients. I mean, I remember models coming in and they'd interview and they'd want to take the program and we'd have the interview and I wouldn't call them back to let them know that I would love to work with them. It was the most bizarre thing. But I don't know why I thought they would reject my offer. They came to ask me to be their coach. Why on earth did I spend, 5 days not calling them back? I just think that is the most bizarre thing on the planet. But I just avoided that piece. So I learned how to work with it because I did it all the time. It was a really scary thing for me, and it was a really bad habit that I needed to address. And I want to pause here for something important. Prioritizing, it is seasonal, and I think that matters deeply. There are seasons for expansion. And then I think there's seasons for recovery. I think there's seasons for planting and maintenance. And then there's others for aggressive building. Right now, I'm on an aggressive building season. And problems happen when people expect themselves to operate at maximum output all the time. It doesn't work like that. There's times that I really, I think to myself, I just am not feeling it. I'm not really off, but I'm not really on. And that's when I just spend the week sitting in the sun for a little bit, looking at what, maybe I could make a move somewhere. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's not being wise because you're at maximum output all the time. That's called burnout. And the goal is not a constant pressure. The goal is an intentional allocation of your time. That's completely different. Sometimes the priority is rest. Sometimes it's healing. Sometimes it's stabilizing financially. And sometimes priority is family. But the key is that you choose consciously instead of drifting unconsciously. That's the difference. And I think one of the greatest gifts you could give yourself is learning to stop apologizing for your priorities. You're going to disappoint someone. You're going to say no sometimes. You're going to protect time. You're going to become less available to things that pull you away from your future. And not everybody will understand that. But builders understand it. People creating meaningful lives understand it because your future is built through repeated prioritization, not random effort, not occasional motivation, repeated prioritization. And I also think people underestimate the emotional power of finishing things. When you prioritize correctly, you start completing things, and completion creates confidence, and confidence creates momentum. Momentum creates belief, and belief changes identity. That's why prioritizing matters far beyond productivity. It changes how you see yourself. You stop feeling scattered. You stop feeling powerless. You stop feeling constantly behind. And you begin trusting yourself again. And that to me is huge. So let me say one final thing. You do not need to build everything today. You do not need to solve your entire future this week. You do not need to solve everything and carry every dream simultaneously. But you do need to decide what matters now, because clarity, as I always say, creates momentum, and momentum changes lives. One protected hour, one meaningful decision, one courageous priority at a time. That is how people build extraordinary things, not perfectly, but intentionally. So here's the part where I tell you exactly what I know. These are my knowings, the things I no longer question because they've shown themselves to me again and again. Not from a book, but from building, getting knocked down, getting back up, and doing this work in the real world. And here are my knowings. I know that the direction of my life is solely based on my focus, my intention. My choices dictate a smooth or a rough ride. Number 2, I know my choices influence my success. And number 3, I know that my energy stays strong when I am clear and honest with myself. So those are my knowings. Okay, so here's time for listener question. And this is Jeff in Jasper, Georgia. Well, there's a lot of J's in there. Jeff in Jasper, Georgia. What are your thoughts about hiring family members? Well, thank you, Jeff. Great question. I have done that many times, and I think I mentioned on a previous podcast that I had to, unfortunately, fire my own auntie because she wasn't the receptionist that we actually needed. So I think if I was to bring up all of my own experiences with family members, I think that the biggest key to this, because I currently work with family members and I always have, but I do think that there is an alignment that needs to be, there has to be a synchronicity when you work with family members. I think it's really important to realize that you want to hire family members that bring something to the table, that bring a vision or something that perhaps you don't have, that they can help build your business. I think it's really important, and I've said this before, don't hire family members because you feel like the business is going to be a good decision for them, something that will help them in their lives. Make sure when you hire family members that will help build your dream, that have an alignment with you, that understand where you are and where you want to go, they're an asset to your company. Think of it in those terms. Are they an asset? Are they going to help you? Is this going to be a very comfortable partnership that you're working with? That's when I think that's the piece. And I love working with my family. My producer is actually my granddaughter, Morgan Clymer. She is the best producer on the planet, and her company, Rainy Day Production House, is at the top of their game. So, yeah, I think it's terrific working with family members, but do it for all the right reasons. So that's my answer to that one, Jeff. Thanks so much for sending the question in to us. Well, it's that time. Thank you for listening to Build It, Baby. And I hope if today's episode spoke, please ask yourself what actually deserves my best energy right now. Not someday, not eventually, now in real time. Because just maybe the next level of your life is not waiting for more time. Maybe it's just patiently waiting for clearer priorities. Always best, P. Build It Baby is a Rainy Day Production House original, hosted by Penelope Bent and produced and edited by Morgan Clymer. Music by Yuri Shemshashin and Oleksiy Holobiev. If this episode spoke to you, please follow the show and leave a review. It helps more dreamers like you find us. And remember, you're not just building a bold business or a career, you're building a bold life.